who do we think was the biggest winner of this debate? I'm going to go with Cruz. It could have been Trump, but no, at the end of the day, yeah, it was a little flat without him, but we kind of forgotten him by the end, so it allowed someone else to seem like the big boss man. And in this case, everybody deferred to Cruz. The first couple of questions were to Cruz. Other people got questions with, okay, Cruz says this, how do you respond? That's normally what they would do with Trump. And he took a little bit of command of center stage, and at the end of the day, you got a sense of, okay, I guess it's Trump versus Cruz. So I'd say that's a fairly large win.
Yeah, I don't agree. I think he did. I think he got better at the end, and I think that the risk that Trump took was that Cruz would command the stage, but I don't think he did. I think the reason why, to get back to that first point about why this ended up being a huge risk for Trump that paid off because he didn't get hurt, is I think Jeb Bush was the biggest winner. I mean, if you just, I think he did the best. His expectations were low. He gave good answers. It was like a guy, he didn't get, nobody was picking on him. So he did well. But I don't know that there's going to, I'd be stunned if there were a big payoff for that. Mm-hmm. So, but I thought he did rather well. And I think free of Trump, he excelled. And it makes you wonder what might have happened if Trump had never been in this race.
We definitely
to marginalize him to the extent that he did.
Yeah, we definitely disagree. That's really interesting that we saw it differently.
I tweeted early on that you can see how visibly more comfortable Jeb Bush is when he's not worried about Donald Trump running up and flicking him between the eyes.
That's right. But it's a real, I mean, that's
really true. But I don't agree that he's the big. I thought about it for the same reasons, and I thought his answers were perfectly fine. And were he in a better position than he already is, they might be acceptable. But if you're trying to shake up the race,
I got it. I'm not saying he shook up the race. I'm just saying he was substantive as much as people can be here, much more so.
And he had that bit of empathy.
Yeah, that's right.
That most of the other candidates don't have. He said a few things that were politically risky in terms of like not expressing every time he talked about a Muslim. He would talk about the caliphate. He didn't say let's kill them all and ban them from the country, and so that's risky in this primary. I think it's probably Ted Cruz. Maybe Marco Rubio, but probably Ted Cruz, especially early on. I thought his responses to the first few questions showed that he was sort of commanding the room. He was the one who mocked Trump openly, and he was obviously prepared to do that. So I think probably him. I think Marco Rubio did his best to capitalize on the opportunity, but to me, he's been delivering the same performance for at least 3 debates now. I don't find it to be particularly convincing. Every voter knows that he's scared of ISIS and hates ISIS. He's not educating anyone about that. And I thought that Ted Cruz did a pretty good job, not of rebutting the charges from Megyn Kelly, but of doing a good job in rebutting Marco Rubio's attempts to slander him.
So that's really interesting because I really disagree with you as well.
They all look bad except for John Kasich, who's not playing the game they're playing. John Kasich's playing another game, which is smart. They're all playing one game. He's going to put all his eggs in another basket, which is a smart basket to put it in. Plus, he's from Ohio, like we said. Jeb Bush, I disagree. I just think there's no way he can come off good. There's nothing to that guy. There's just not, give me a break. And
so you're saying Kasich's the winner?
I think Kasich is the winner. The rest of them are losers.
No, I think Kasich did okay too. Real quick, but I think Kasich and Bush are playing largely the same game, except Bush is more invested. Kasich can't. There's no real embarrassing number for Kasich in Iowa. There is an embarrassing number for Jeb Bush in Iowa. He's much more at stake. I just think he looked like a grown-up. And without having a guy do as John said, like, you're like, that makes it. But if I'm right, like, let's suppose that, and again, I'm just saying, if I'm right and Jeb Bush, then Donald Trump is a genius because he's like, so I didn't come and Jeb Bush won the debate. You know what? I'm not terribly worried about that. That is not a concern for me. But the real winner, I think, is, and it's not a candidate, would be Megyn Kelly.
God damn you. I was just going to say that. And also, to a lesser extent, Robert, who I've never once even noticed was a living human thing. But he asked some good questions, and I thought Megyn Kelly, especially considering the expectations going into the debate, if you thought Trump was scared of her and he tried to say at the last minute he wasn't, I think that the questions she asked, the way she composed herself, she not only asked good questions and made you believe, she would have made Trump look ridiculous, but she also did what most of the candidates, or most of the moderators generally don't, aside from Chris Wallace there, is when someone tries to butt in and just control the conversation, she shut Kasich down like he was Marco Rubio.
You said Bret Baier to a much lesser extent, and I would agree, but it's to such a lesser extent that it's to no extent.
Okay, so now let me disagree with a lot of things and then come back to our agreement. So Jeb Bush is unhelpable. Okay,
can't fix it.
this tick, and like he seems like he's agitated with everything, right? No,
Look,
gone.
you're missing it.
Okay. I'm missing it. Okay, so no, he was not the winner. In fact, I have him as runner-up for Biggest Loser. Rubio, I thought, got pulverized. I thought the Fox News crew destroyed him. But the reason you guys got me to start thinking about my answer is, well, if we all disagree on who won and all four of us picked someone else, well, then maybe Trump was the winner, because no one impressed. But at the end, I'm not going with him either. Okay, and I'm changing my answer to the one that we all agree on. But I'll make it a little broader. Fox News. That was as tough a questions as I've seen the Republicans ever get. Again, because of what Jimmy said during the live coverage, because they're not going to be called the liberal media, so they have a little bit more leeway. But on the other hand, look, Trump yelled at him for asking tough questions, and they doubled down and said, "Oh, I don't give a care. Okay, Trump's not here. I'm going to ask even tougher questions, right?" And they hit Rubio super hard. They hit Cruz super hard, and those are the two guys on stage with the best polling, right? Since Trump's not there. And I thought Megyn Kelly was super tough and super fair, and I didn't think I'd ever say that about a Fox News host. I thought Chris Wallace asked a number of good questions. You like Brett Baer. Overall, they really acquitted themselves very, very well as substantive and tougher questions as we've seen in these debates.
They looked almost like news people.